Despite the fact that I spend dozens of hours each week looking at and thinking about watches, I still get that ping of excitement when I see something that feels new and fresh. Now, I'm not talking crazy out of left field stuff here, just watches that feel like they genuinely bring something new to the table. The Grand Seiko SBGK005 is definitely one of those watches. The SBGK005 is one of the latest additions to Grand Seiko's Elegance collection. And basically all that means is that Grand Seiko sees this as a dress watch. And sure, it can be a perfectly great dress watch, but I think it's a lot more than that. This case shape is new for Grand Seiko, though it definitely draws on the classic grammar of design cases like the 44GS and the 62GS. Sure, it's a 39mm round watch, but it's not your typical round watch at all. A lot of this comes down to the lugs, which are short and dramatically arched. This makes the case sit nice and tight to the wrist, putting all the emphasis on the dial. Speaking of which, wow is this dial incredible. Grand Seiko calls the pattern the Mount Iwate after a mountain that sits near one of the brand's factories. It's a deep blue color with a textured sunburst pattern that's unlike anything I've seen before. Combined with the razor-sharp hands, sparkling hour markers, and crisp printing, this is Grand Seiko doing what it does best. I really can't think of another watchmaker putting dials of this quality in watches anywhere close to this price range. The dial layout itself is a bit atypical, with a small seconds at 9 o'clock and a power reserve indicator at 3 o'clock. The anchor points for the two hands are asymmetrical, which bothers me when I notice it, but I don't notice it all that often. There are certain times of day when the four hands look perfectly balanced on the dial, and other times when they're a bit of a mess. Overall though, I found legibility high and rarely looked down and didn't like what I saw staring back at me. One of my favorite things about this watch is that it's hand wound, giving you a good excuse to just stare at it every 2 or 3 days. The movement inside is the new Grand Seiko Caliber 9S63, which is based on the older 9S64, just with the small seconds and power reserve added. The movement is beautifully finished. I especially like the countersinking and polishing on the barrel, and the seemingly iridescent stripes across the plates and bridges. However, this is where my single biggest complaint with this watch comes into play. There's a Grand Seiko lion logo printed on the underside of the sapphire crystal, which blocks the view of the otherwise lovely movement. In practice, I found the SBGK005 to be much more versatile than what you'd think of as a traditional dress watch. Before I put the SBGK005 on, I preemptively swapped out the glossy blue crocodile strap for something a little softer and a little more casual. The slightly funky proportions, medium size, and textured dial all add visual interest and help the watch act as something of a chameleon. Sure, you can throw on a suit and be good to go for that special dinner reservation, but the watch also looks killer walking around the city in a t-shirt or with a light jacket. If you're someone who's interested in design, appreciates a bit of wabi-sabi, and relishes opportunities to do things just a little bit differently, you're gonna love this watch. At $7,400, the SBGK005 is on the more expensive end of the spectrum for Grand Seiko's Elegance watches. But I didn't once find myself wishing it had something extra to justify that price tag. You're paying for design, you're paying for craftsmanship, and you're paying to have a watch that's not exactly like what everyone else is wearing. And in all three categories, I think this watch totally delivers.